Hi, Gigi. Come share an apple with me. I picked it fresh from Granny Smith's sinister tree. Don't mind my stories, you'll soon see. They're as dark and disturbing as they can be. Murmurs of secrets, bloody sodden crimes, Granny's bone-clicking tales will twist your mind. You'll be hanging on my words from the edge of your seats. Now, how'd you like to go dig up some bodies with me? So go grab a shovel and gather around, 'cause 8 feet under is where they'll be found. This podcast contains detailed discussions of real-life crimes, which may include descriptions of violence, sensitive subject matter, and other potentially distressing content. Listener discretion is strongly advised. The material is intended for mature audiences only and may not be suitable for children or those who may find such topics triggering. Welcome back again. Granny's back. Tell a friend, or whatever the fuck Eminem said. I think that was Eminem. Anyway, welcome back to 8 Feet Under with Granny Smith. Today, before I get started, I actually have 3 things, because I'll forget. Number 1, shout out to my good friend, REA, because the last episode when I was talking about Joseph Fritzl's mom, there was a word that I forgot that was used to describe women who couldn't have kids, don't have kids, don't want kids, unmarried, that type of thing. And when I saw him shortly after the episode released, he told me what the word was, but I already fucking forgot. So, REA, if you could text me the word so I won't forget. I know I could use the Googs, but why? This is why I surround myself with people smarter than me, because they always have answers for me. So, thanks again, REA. Text it to me. So I also have some more book recommendations. I know that in one of the previous episodes, I had recommended the book by Dr. Robert Hare, who created the Psychopathy Checklist, and he identified the different types of psychopaths. So there's another book by Dr. Martha Stout called The Sociopath Next Door, and it's kind of the same concept. She helps you identify different types of sociopaths and how to protect yourself should you come across one or have one in your life. I think it's really interesting. And yes, there is a difference between a psychopath and a sociopath. They are very, very close, and sometimes it's hard to tell the difference, but they're both in the antisocial personality category. But sociopaths are a little more reckless, and their acts of aggression are usually impulsive because they are a little more capable of possessing emotions than a psychopath is. And they may have a weak, damn near non-existing conscience, and they are usually self-serving, but they still have the ability to possess some type of emotion, and they tend to react on those. And a while back, before I started documenting where I see things or where I get information, I read somewhere that sociopaths are more likely to get caught than a psychopath because they react on that emotion and they're so impulsive that they kind of maybe get sloppy or leave evidence or whatever, and that they're more likely to confess because some of them, not all of them, have that sliver of guilt. On the other hand, psychopaths are more emotionally detached, and they usually display extreme superficial charm. They're definitely more calculated than a sociopath is usually, and they truly, truly enjoy harming others. Then there's my favorite question. Are they born or are they made? I've come across this debate so many times, and from what I've learned or what I understand is that psychopaths are believed to be the result of genetics, brain abnormalities, or head injuries. And you know what? Phineas Gage, I don't know if anybody's ever heard of him. He's actually on my list. I was supposed to cover him, but now I'm going to spoil it a little bit. Phineas Gage is a prime example of this with the head injuries. He was a railroad construction foreman in like 1848 or something, and he survived this accident where this iron, I think it was called like a tamping iron, was driven through his skull. I don't know if there was like an explosion or something, but this iron rod thing wound up penetrating his skull, and after the accident, his personality completely changed. He was more aggressive, impulsive, and like socially inappropriate. And I have seen that a lot in some of the stories that I read about violent criminals or aggressive people. They've had some type of head injury to the prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for a shit ton of things like our decision making, impulse control, regulation of emotions, motivation, what else? The ability to adapt to change, and our social behavior. So again, psychopaths are believed to be the result of genetics and head injuries or brain abnormalities. But sociopaths, on the other hand, are believed to be more of the product of their environment and experiences throughout their life. I have literally heard people argue that it has to be one or the other. Some people believe that sociopaths and psychopaths are born that way, just straight out the womb, and no matter what life experiences they have, they will just be quote unquote bad or evil. And then there are other people who believe that no one can possibly be born bad, but I believe in both. I'm no professional, but that's just my opinion. I did study forensic psychology at GCU, and I made the mistake of taking a break. And a year and a half later, I need to go back. The next book I recommend is called The Anatomy of Evil by Dr. Michael H. Stone. And this kind of explains the difference between committing an evil act and actually being evil. And when I say evil, let me be clear, he's not talking about evil as in like demonic possession or anything like that. It's more of evil acts like torture, sexual assault, murder, those type of things. And the book is based on the biographies of over, I believe, 600 violent criminals. I believe he personally interviewed quite a few of these criminals himself. And what Dr. Stone did was create a 22-level hierarchy of evil behavior. The hierarchy is called the Gradations of Evil scale. Now, I'm not going to lie, the book is a little long. It's like 300 or 400 pages long, I think. You may be able to find it on audiobook. I do have to give a trigger warning. Again, remember he's talking to some of the most disturbing, disgusting, awful, terrible people. So some of it can be tough to read. I actually had to put the book down a few times, specifically with this one story. It was just really hard for me to read. So it actually took me a few days to get through that one little part. So it may not be something that you could just sit and read all the way through. You may have to do little by little, but I do recommend it. So again, he created this scale of 22 levels, and then those levels are broken down into different tiers. So I guess I could do a quick rundown of the tiers. Tier 1 will be levels 1 through 6, which is justifiable homicide, crimes of passion, and impulse. These are non-psychopathic killers driven by rage, jealousy, desperation, things like that, and they usually feel some type of remorse. Tier 2 are levels 7 through 16, and these are killers with psychopathic features. These are the people that are extremely narcissistic, manipulative, but their motives and actions are not purely sadistic. Then we have tier 3, which are levels 17 through 22. And these are the most profound psychopathic and sadistic people. These are going to include our serial killers and murderers who torture their victims. They show absolutely no sign of any type of remorse or guilt. Of course, level 22 is the highest level of quote-unquote evil, and that would include like our notorious killers, like our Jeffrey Dahmers, our John Wayne Gacy's, the Atlanta Monster, like people like that who truly enjoy the torture. They go looking for people to harm. So for example, somebody in tier 1 would be maybe somebody who killed like a home intruder. You know, you're at home, you're minding your business, someone breaks into your house, you have to defend yourself, your children, your family, you have no choice. You know, maybe you're fighting them off, something happens in a tussle, and the intruder winds up dead. Are you an evil person? No, but you technically committed an evil act. And then on the other hand, again, Dahmers, Gacy's, Bundys, those are evil people committing evil crimes. They enjoy it. It's intentional. They'll repeat it until the day they die, if they had the chance to. And the last thing, it's more of a question. Has anybody else heard of the MAOA gene? I heard about this a long time ago. I don't know how I stumbled across it. I don't know if it was on a documentary or in a book, but I've also heard it called the warrior gene, the serial killer gene, or the aggressive gene. And it produces, don't laugh at me for butchering this, monoamine oxidase A enzyme. I know I totally fucked that up. Anyways, it helps regulate serotonin and dopamine, which are linked to our mood and our behavior. And then there's a specific variation of the gene called MAOA-L, and that's linked to the predisposition of antisocial behavior and aggression, especially in people who have experienced some type of childhood trauma. I got conflicting information. I remember when I first heard about this gene, what I was reading stated that not everyone with the gene is aggressive, but all violent criminals or all violent people do have the gene. Now, when I looked into it, maybe last week, I think, what I was reading stated that not everybody with the gene is aggressive and not all aggressive people have the gene. And I'm not going to lie, I didn't really have time to do a deep dive into it, so maybe I will this weekend. We'll see. I just thought it's interesting and wanted to know if anybody else has heard of this gene before. All right, enough distractions. Focus, people, focus. Today I wanted to do a mystery, but I actually wound up stumbling across a serial killer. So there is a little bit of a mystery in it. I came across a case of a missing woman, and everything that I found on her was tied to this serial killer. So today we're covering both since their stories are tied together. Today we'll be traveling to St. Joseph, Missouri, where women seem to disappear around this one specific man. So go grab whatever you need, your cup of coffee, your bedazzled shovel, so we can dig 8 feet into the story of the serial killer Marvin Lee Irvin and the disappearance of Micki Jo West. Sources for today are the charlieproject.org website, an episode of one of my faves, Unsolved Mysteries, the Doe Network website, a Wikipedia article, and the rest will be in the show notes. So let's do it. Marvin Lee Irvin is a former police officer who was born in St. Joseph, Missouri on May 4th, 1949. When he was younger, he was described as like a soft-spoken, well-mannered, polite boy. He and his family lived in a 3-story home, and they seemed to get along well with their neighbors and everyone in the community. Marvin later graduated from Highland High School in Highland, Kansas, and then when he was about 21, he joined the St. Joseph Police Department in 1970. But that was short-lived, and he wound up resigning just a few months after he became an officer. Now, I didn't really find much information on why he resigned. There was one little blurb on a Google search that said it may have been due to drug use, but I didn't really see that in any of the other sources, so I'm really not sure about that one. And then there really isn't much on his whereabouts from 1970 to 1974. But in 1974, he was accused of kidnapping a 15-year-old girl from a drugstore in St. Joseph and then raping her. Now, he was arrested. However, the girl wouldn't testify against him, so unfortunately, he was never charged. Also, in 1974, Marvin started a relationship with a girl named Ruth West, and I cannot emphasize the word girl enough. Ruth gets pregnant and has Marvin's baby when she's just 15 years old. So we're off to that perverted pedophile start with this guy already. My daughter is almost 15, and I can't even imagine a 21-year-old pursuing her. So anyway, Ruth has a brother named Calvin West who was married to 19-year-old Micki Jo West. And in 1979, Ruth, her brother Calvin, Calvin's wife Micki, and the creep Marvin all head to California where Marvin and Ruth get married. But their relationship took a turn for the worse pretty quickly. When they got back to Missouri, Ruth later states that Marvin was emotionally manipulative and physically abusive towards her. Also, shortly after leaving California, when they got back to Missouri, Micki and Ruth's brother Calvin wound up separating, and Micki moved in with her mom, Bernita, and her stepdad, Robert Wolfing. After the separation, though, Micki and Ruth did remain very close friends. Things wound up getting so bad between Ruth and Marvin that Ruth took their 4-year-old son and ran to escape Marvin's abuse, and they wound up at this motel in Elwood, Kansas. Now, when she left, she only told a handful of people that she was leaving and where she was going, which included her mom, her sister, Micki Jo West, and then there was this couple that helped Ruth escape. So to give a little background on Micki Jo West, she was born on September 25th, 1959. She grew up in Atchison, Kansas. She was Caucasian, 5'6", about 140 to 145 pounds, with brown hair, brown eyes. She wore glasses, and she was a nurse's aide at the St. Joseph State Hospital. And Micki actually started carrying a hammer around with her because she was terrified. She was being followed, and she was receiving threats from Marvin. On September 11th, 1979, Micki disappears. She was last seen at 6 a.m. when she left her house on the 1400 block of Oliver Street. She was wearing her white nurse's aide uniform and white shoes. She was actually on her way to catch the bus at 15th and Masani Street to get to work, but she never made it. Now remember, Marvin's wife Ruth and their son ran into hiding at that motel, and only a few people knew where she was. Later on the same day that Micki went missing, Marvin and 2 of his friends find Ruth, break into her hotel room, and essentially kidnap her and her son. They drag her out, forcing them into the truck, forcing them to go back to St. Joseph, Missouri. And I want to know how they found out where she was. One of those few people had to have said something. Micki's family thought that Marvin had something to do with her disappearance. So the police brought him in for questioning. He took several polygraph tests, but they were inconclusive. And the police later admit that they failed to search Marvin's car during the investigation into Micki's disappearance. And when it comes to the polygraph thing, I think I have mixed feelings. Like, of course, I understand what the point of a polygraph is, but the results aren't always really reliable. And because of that, from what I understand, those results aren't even admissible as evidence in court in the U.S. And I feel like there are guilty people who know how to pass those tests. And on the other hand, there are innocent people who may have inconclusive results or fail the test because maybe they're nervous or anxious. I've also read somewhere or heard somewhere that certain medications or certain health conditions can alter the results of a polygraph test. So again, I guess I just have mixed feelings about it. Anyways, moving on. In October of 1979, Ruth and Marvin got into yet another altercation. This time, it ended with Marvin chasing poor Ruth barefoot through St. Joseph. But this was the last straw for Ruth because she wound up filing for divorce. So now we fast forward to September 11th, 1986, which is the 7th anniversary of Micki West's disappearance. A delivery man was making his rounds at this shopping mall in Kansas, which was about 75 miles away from where Micki disappeared. And this delivery man found an anonymous letter that was addressed to the St. Joseph's Police Department. Now, the letter didn't reveal any clues as to who sent it, but they did claim that they were with Marvin when he killed Micki Jo West. Unfortunately, there wasn't much the police could do since there were no leads as to who wrote the letter. 2 years later, 1988, another letter surfaced. This time, it was sent directly to a TV reporter by the name of Thurman Mitchell. Now, this letter says that if Thurman meets with the anonymous writer, he or she will show him exactly where Micki's body is. Understandably, Thurman was like, that's a no for me, hard pass. Instead, he took the smart and safe approach and decided to air a story regarding the letter where he asked the writer to come forward, but unfortunately no one ever came forward. The authorities believe that the letters weren't meant to taunt anyone, but they were actually written by someone who truly felt guilty and really wanted Micki to be found. Later in 1988, Marvin, along with an unnamed woman, moved to Ames, Iowa, where he became a railroad worker. English. March 30th, 1989, Marvin got himself into some more shit. After shooting at a woman by the name of Janet Hugridge multiple times, she filed a police report. Now, as far as I can tell, this is not the same woman that he originally moved to Iowa with. This is a different woman. And I don't think Janet was injured because the articles state that he shot over her head multiple times. So I don't know if he was just trying to scare her or if he just had really bad aim. I don't know. Finally, Marvin was arrested, and it took 20 officers to chase him down. Since they chased him through multiple counties, I'm going to assume it was a freaking car chase, unless this dude can run like the fucking Flash. Either way, his ass was finally caught, and he pled guilty to 2 weapons charges and avoiding arrest. He only received 5 years probation. And again, I'm no professional, but isn't shooting at somebody multiple times considered attempted murder? Shouldn't there be a heavier sentence for that? What do I know? So Marvin leaves Iowa, goes back to Missouri, where women start disappearing again. In September of 1990, a 31-year-old woman by the name of Patricia Diane Rose vanished after taking a break from work. Now, one source says that she vanished from her home while she was on her way to the bar, but other sources say that Patricia was at work, where she was a meat cutter, and then when her break time came around, she decided to stop in at a bar called Brew's Blue Town. Now, she was supposed to go back to work after her break was over, but she never made it back. Patricia was 5'2", 130 pounds, with shoulder-length brown hair and brown eyes. Now, her mom had been trying to reach her for several days, and after she couldn't reach Patricia, she knew something was wrong, so she reported her missing on September 17th, 1990. Then another woman goes missing about a month later by the name of Crystal Lynn Simmons, who was 33 years old when she vanished, and she was at a bar downtown on October 29th of 1990. Now, the authorities, thank God, got a tip saying that Crystal had been with a man by the name of, take a wild guess, Marvin Lee Irvin, and that they should search his truck. Thank God for this tip, because police were able to get a warrant. They searched his truck, and they found a towel that was soaked in Crystal Simmons' blood underneath his seat. Thankfully, Marvin was arrested and detained, awaiting charges, but he claims he never killed anyone. Now, Marvin's brother also doesn't believe that he was guilty of murder either. He says, quote, "They want a guy for a lot of cases. I feel like the whole thing is kind of a setup," end quote. A month later in November, 3 hunters from Lawrence, Kansas named Kenny Starr, Chuck Ferguson, and John Starr find a body in a cornfield. When the police arrived, they found the remains of Crystal Simmons and Patricia Rose, and both women had been repeatedly hit in the head. Now, what's interesting is this cornfield was near the farm in Kansas where Marvin had grown up in that 3-story home with his family, and the neighbors tell the authorities that they haven't heard from or seen Marvin in over 20 years. Now, this farm is about 2 miles away from the highway, and it could only be accessed from this little narrow dirt road that was difficult for cars to even drive on. Although it was a little busier than usual with fishermen, hunters, teens that were apparently looking for like an off-the-beat place to party and make out and stuff, the area was still known as one of those quiet, rural places where it's like a tight-knit community. Everybody knows everybody. A resident by the name of Marge Runke, I think I'm saying that right, lives on a farm near where the burial site was, and she says, quote, "It's so hard to think that this is happening in a little community which is quiet," end quote. A man by the name of William Crabtree and his wife Jane are the current owners of the farm where Crystal and Patricia were found, and William states, quote, "We're not used to this. In a quiet community, you don't expect this," end quote. Now, there were people in the town that were living there when Marvin was younger, and they say that they just cannot believe that he's responsible for murdering 3 women. Because remember, they knew him as this quiet, shy, well-mannered polite child. So they're just having a hard time believing that he's responsible for these terrible things. But eventually, Marvin cracks and confesses to the murders of Crystal, Patricia, and Micki. He says in 1979, Micki was sitting in his car and he stabbed her 4 times in the chest, shot her twice, then buried her in a cornfield in Kansas. So remember, police were investigating Marvin in the beginning as a suspect in Micki's disappearance, but for whatever reason, they didn't search his fucking car. He was careless enough to leave a towel soaked in Crystal's blood underneath his seat. So if he stabbed Micki 4 times, shot her twice, there had to have been some type of evidence in that vehicle. And sorry, but leaving a towel soaked in blood underneath the seat, sharp as a marble, that one. Anyway, moving on. In October of 1991, Marvin received a life sentence in prison without parole after he pled guilty to 2 counts of first-degree murder of Patricia Rose and Crystal Simmons. And then in a deal to take the death penalty off the table, Marvin pled guilty to 1 count of second-degree murder of Micki Jo West. Now, twice, and I say twice, Marvin took the police to the farm where he claims he killed and buried Micki, but they were unable to locate her body. The first time they went to the farm, they had the bulldozers, the K-9 unit, the whole 9 was ready to search for Micki, but due to extreme weather conditions, the search had to be delayed. Then they go out there again, but the authorities still could not find Micki Jo West's remains. To date, Micki Jo West's remains have not been found, and until she's found, the Charlie Project says Micki Jo West is still a missing person. And that, my friends, is the story of the asshat, Marvin Lee Irvin, and the disappearance of Micki Jo West. You know how I feel about unsolved crimes. They will irk me until the day I die because I need answers. Was Marvin lying about where he buried Micki? Did he really kill her? Remember, she was scared and carrying that hammer around. Maybe she went into hiding somewhere and he just felt, well, damn, they got me on these other 2 murders, so they're going to get me on Micki's murder anyway. And to take the death penalty off the table, maybe that's why he confessed. Who knows? I have so many questions, and hopefully there will be an answer someday. As always, feel free to DM me with any story suggestions. Oh, and I finally got a freaking Facebook page for the podcast. It took my blood, sweat, tears, and sacrifice of an organ to get this damn page. So on Facebook, look for 8 Feet Under with Granny Smith. Everything is all spelled out. And I caved and made a TikTok for the pod as well. If you know me, I'm not really a big TikTok fan. I think I opened an account years ago, like a personal account. I scrolled for no lie, 5 minutes and then completely erased the app. But here I am. I have a TikTok for the pod. So the handle is the same as my IG and X, which is the number 8 FTUNDER_GS85. Until next crime, stay safe, stay hydrated, and remember, an apple a day keeps the motherfucking murderers away. Goodbye.